So this is the part 3 of module 4 in COA. So here we will start our discussion on IO module structure. So in IO module structure, we are going to learn the structure of IO module. Okay. So this module connects to, we know what is IO module, the module that is connecting to the rest of the computer. Now, how it is connected to the rest of the computer? We have already said there are different system buses. That is, there is a set of signal lines, that is the system bus lines. Okay, so IO module doesn't operate in isolation. It plugs into a computer's shared communication highway, that is the system bus. It is connected, that the sentence means that okay, our IO module is connected to this communication, the computer's shared communication, that is the system bus. This system bus, we know, they carries the data, address and the control signals. So you have to understand this. First thing that you have to understand is this para, that is, first we have to understand that our module is connected with the rest of the computer through this computer's shared communication highway, that is the system bus. This system bus can carry data, address and control signals. This is what we have seen here. This was what we have seen in our previous class itself, that is our IO module is connected to our computer through the system buses, which is containing this address line, data line and control line. So this is the shared communication highway of our computer. So our IO module is plugged into this system bus for this same purpose. What purpose? The communication purpose itself. Okay, so this is what this paragraph you have to understand. So the data transferred to and from the module are buffered in one or more data registers. So here, first let us see the image for better understanding. This is a block diagram, that is the main structure of our IO module. So here if you see, there are data registers, status or control registers. Now let us see what do we mean by this data registers. Now here if you see, the data is transferred to and from the module and are buffered in one or more data registers. There are data registers where these data which is coming from or going from the module or coming to the module is actually buffered in one or more data registers. Means in this data registers we are temporarily storing this data. Data registers act as a temporary holding area. Since the CPU and external device is operating at a different speed, the register hold data briefly. So neither side has to wait on the other. So why we are having this data registers is because we already have discussed this in the previous video itself. That is that we have already told our CPU and external device is operating at different speed, so that to match the speed between the CPU and the external, because we know CPU is very fast. So to match that speed, we will be having this buffer system in our IO module that will help to store temporarily this data. So this register holds its data briefly. So neither this side has to wait on the other. So to prevent this waiting, data registers are there which will temporarily store this data which is to and from the module in both the direction. Okay, so this data registers is acting as a temporary holding area, because since the CPU and the external device is operating at different speed, the register hold this data briefly, so neither the side has to wait on the other side. So to prevent the waiting and to make sure to make this balancing of the speed difference between CPU and external devices, we have this data registers which temporarily stores the data. So you have to understand the data which is transferred to and from the module is basically buffered into one or more data registers. So this is the first component here, the data register, which would be directly connected to our data lines. Okay, now there is another thing that we have to understand is the next thing. There may also be one or more data registers. There can be one or more status registers that provide the current status information. They are like a dashboard. They tell the CPU the current condition of the IO module. Is it busy? Has a transfer completed? Did an error occur? If the IO module is busy, IO module busy means what? Okay, device is busy, right? So if it is busy, or if it has a transfer has been completed, or if there is an error occurred, the current state, you know, we know the CPU has to know the current state. So there is this, what is there, there is this status register, which will provide the information of the current state of status of our what, current status of our IO module. So there may be also be one or more status register that provide the current status information. So if you see image, this is the status or control registers. Fine. Now if you see here, status register may also would function as a control register, because it will accept detailed control information from the processor. The same register can serve as a dual purpose. It can receive information from the CPU, like if you wanted to receive some commands from the CPU, the detailed control information from the CPU, like if you want to start a transfer or reset the device, these informations are given through this control register, that is this same register, status or control register is called. In addition to reporting the status, it can also receive instruction from the CPU. So the status register may also function like the control register, like it accepts detailed control information from the processor. Why it also act as a control register is because it would accept this detailed control related information, like detailed instructions and informations from the processor. So that is why you can say that it can also act as a control register, the same register. Fine. So here we have understood that this IO module is basically connected to our computer system. It's like they are plugged into our computer's communication, common shared communication highway, that is system bus, which can carry data, address and control. Through this, the rest of the computers, the module is connected to the rest of the computer. Now there are data register, status register and control register. Data register are those registers. So here we know the data is transferred to and from the module. They are buffered into this data register, because data register are temporarily storage devices, that storage temporarily holding data register that is there in our IO module. Why? In order to balance the speed difference between the CPU and the external device, because they are operating at different speed, right? So this would prevent any of the device, maybe the IO module, the CPU, to wait on the other, to prevent waiting. Then we have the status register, which would give the current status information of our IO module's current status is given in the status register. Now the status register can also function as control register, like it would accept this detailed control information from whom? The processor. So the processor would give some instruction, which can be like if it is to start a transfer, to restart the device, such instructions will be given. That instruction can be received by this IO module using this control register itself. Okay, that is why we have said it is status or control register here. Fine. Now the logic within the module interacts with the processor via a set of control lines. We have said that the main logic is that our module would interact with processor with this set of control lines. The IO logic circuitry communicate with the CPU over this control wires distinct from data lines to coordinate the operation. We have told you there would be address lines, this control lines, data lines. This is the interface to the system bus. This side would be the interface in which there is system buses, and this is the interface to the external device. For the external device, whatever we have finally, we are giving to that to the external device. So this side is the interface to the external device, and this side is the interface to our system bus. This much we have understood. Now the processor use the control line to issue commands to the IO module. Now processor want to send some commands to the IO module. That is sent through the control lines. We have already learned. If the CPU, it sends commands like read, write or reset over these control lines to direct the IO module's behavior. So this control lines is used here, what we have already discussed. It can send commands to the IO module like read, write, reset. These commands are sent through these control lines to direct this IO module's behavior. Fine. The module must also be able to recognize and generate address associated with the devices it controls. Now every device is connected to the module, and each of these devices has a unique address, which we have already discussed in the previous class itself. So the module has to decode this incoming address signals to know which device is being referred to. So there would be address line would give some address. So this module should be able to recognize that address and decode that address, and should understand which device that address is being referred to, and generate these appropriate addresses when talking to external device. Also, if you wanted to talk to any if the CPU wants to take anything from the external, or if the CPU is external device want to talk to the CPU, it also generate the appropriate address when you are talking to the external device also. So main thing is that the module must be able to recognize and generate addresses. It should also able to recognize it. Also, sometimes it has to generate the address associated with the device, that is that address of the device that it controls. So each of the device has a unique address. It is able to recognize it. Also, sometimes maybe we have to talk to the external device, so it has to also generate this address of the devices it controls. So that is another important thing that you have to understand. So for this, there is an address line. There is main IO logic which is doing most of the thing. Okay, so this IO logic will be able to do that, and through this we can say which external device. This is a lot of external device will be there, right? So it, from this address line, it has to decode this address and go to any external device which it is talking about. There we have to go. That is our main thing, whether it is this or there will be lot of external device. Through this address line, it has to, this IO logic basically recognize this address of the external device, and it has to do its work accordingly. Fine. So now each IO module has a unique address. IO module also has a unique address, or if it controls more than one external device, a unique set of addresses there. Just like house on the street, each module has a distinct address, so the CPU can reach. Each module has a distinct. Each IO module has a unique address, or if it controls more than one external device, there would be a set of unique address for each of this IO module. Now, an IO module that takes on most of the detailed processing burden is usually referred to as an IO channel or IO processor. So a smart or powerful IO module which handles most of the work itself. That is an IO module that takes most of this work itself, most of this processing burden, detailed processing burden and all, that is taken by itself, is those type of IO module is referred to as an IO channel or a IO processor. This is some additional theory part that you have to understand. The IO module which takes most of this burden processing, detailed processing burden. So a smart or powerful IO module handles most of the work itself, right? So such IO module which is doing most of the detailed processing burden, such IO module is referred to as the IO channel or IO processor. Now IO module that is quite primitive and requires detailed control is usually referred to as an IO control. Now device controller. Now there is two kinds of IO channel or IO processor is the, and IO controller or device controller is the one which can take on most of the detailed processing burdens are called as IO channel or IO processor. But one that is quite primitive and requires detailed control, which requires control, they are called as IO controller or device controller. Like a simpler module does very little on its own and needs a CPU to manage every step. These are common device controllers you find in, like these are the IO controllers. Example, disk controller, USB controller and are there. They are very does only very little on its own, and they always need CPU to manage every step of it. That is IO controller. So these are quite primitive and requires detailed control. Okay, primitive and they requires detailed control. These are called as IO controller or device controller. Okay, like disk controller is the, USB controller is the. So IO module that takes most of this detailed processing burden is known as the IO channel or IO processor. The IO module that is basically quite primitive and requires this detailing control is known as the IO controller or device controller. So there is IO channel or IO processor, then there is IO controller or device controller. There are two things. So in our basic structure of our IO module, we have this interface to the system bus, interface to external device. Then I already discussed data register is the status or control register is the. Then we have this main IO logic. Then data lines, address lines and controls are mainly coming to this IO logic. From there we will decide, okay, where which device will be it going and all is decided by that. IO logic would decide. Now from the external device data can go in and from, but now status and control, we know there is data, status and control signals mainly between this IO module and the external devices. Fine. Now this is external device interface logic. Here we have the external devices, right? So the status of this external device is given to the IO module. Similarly, the control, what you have to do, that would be given to the, that is the command from the IO. Control would contain the command that is from the IO module that you are giving to this device is the control, right? Status would be given from the external device and data is shared between them. So here you have to understand, in outside of this, here you have our external devices and here you have the processor and buses, system buses. Okay, from here what is happening, and from here the data can share to and from. Status of the external device is given to the IO module. Now what is the control? That is, here you are giving the command from the IO is giving to the external device, that is given through this control. Fine. So this is the basic block diagram of our IO module, that is a structure. So if you see in the left hand side, the system bus is connected to the module. The system bus can connect to this IO module through these three types of lines, that is data line which carries the actual byte, address lines would specify which device or register it has to talk to, the address, unique address of the device or register, and control line carries commands and acknowledgement from the CPU. The commands from the CPU that we have already discussed, that the commands, issue commands to the CPU is through the control lines. Whether we have to read or write or reset the commands is given from the CPU to this IO module using this control lines, right? Now inside the module we told you data register, we temporarily hold data. Status and control registers is also there, both feed into the IO logic, which is the brain. This IO logic is the brain which can decode our address. This IO logic can decode this address, interrupt the commands, and also it can coordinate. So if there is address, it can decode the address. If there is control lines, it can interpret the commands which is given to the IO logic. And on the right hand side, each external device interface logic is there. Now block diagrams the module to one physical device handling the device specific data, status and control signals. Fine. Fine. Now here we have interface to system bus and interface to external devices. Then we have the data register, data registers. Then you have the status or the control registers. Fine. Data lines is the, address line is the, control line is the. Fine. So this is the IO logic. Then external device interface logic is also, through this the interaction between the external device basically is coordinated. So there is interface to system bus and this is the interface to the external bus. This is the basic structure of our IO module. Thank you.